Welcome to the December 10th, 2015 meeting of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. Last regular meeting of the year. I'm Len Welsh, Board President, and at this time I'll take roll call. Director Cordova?
Here.
Director Gillette?
Here.
Director Sherris Watt?
Here.
Director Toombs?
Here.
So we have a full board. And at this time, I will invite folks to give public comment on anything that's not on the agenda for tonight.
Hi, my name's Simon Brofman, and I want to commend the police department. I want to commend the police department. There was a traffic issue in front of my house, and they handled it extremely well. Master Sergeant
Oh, say it
Hull-
louder, please.
Master Sergeant Hull and Officer Armanino, I think, how to pronounce it.
Right.
Yes, and I just want to commend the police department. It was a tricky situation, and I think they handled it extremely well. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear any of that. Could all that be repeated? I'm joking. Thank you, though, Simon.
Would anybody else like to say something? Come on up, Mabry.
Last June, Mr. Hart presented to the board and the community his ambitious 100-day plan to familiarize himself with the community and its priorities and to establish a vision for the future. It had lofty and laudable goals. In his July report given in August, he reported meeting with many community members, announced a community meet and greet event. But since then, he has only reported on training, Since then, he has reported on training, meeting the sheriff and Contra Costa chiefs of police, conferences, and many more mundane topics of the housekeeping sort. What we have not seen in the 5 months of 150 days has been any further mention of items of the 100-day plan. More importantly, the board has not been asking for any updates. I call this yet another example of failure for the board to oversee the operations of the district. Yes, these goals were lofty and perhaps a bit unrealistic, but by not asking for ongoing reports, we imply that we as a district don't really care whether any of these objectives ever happen. Let's just go on as usual and hope we all will muddle through. I was hoping all this past turmoil would have given us more. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening, Jim Watt. First of all, I'd like to thank also Mr. Hart and the police department, because last night I got my certificate of something for completing the Citizens Police Academy, and I have to say it was a very interesting 8 or so weeks, and I encourage others to go to the next one. I thought it was very well put on. Thank you very much. I'm here just to remind you that at the last meeting I spoke about the fact that I believe that there are some conflicts that need to be resolved in the interim police chief's contract, and I haven't seen any indication in the agenda tonight that there's a movement afoot to do that. So I just wanted to remind you once again, and I will continue to do so, that the conflict that I'm referring to is that in the contract it says that Mr. Hart will not engage in any other activities as part of his role here as GM COP, but in fact also serves as council member for Dublin at pay. And in fact, somebody sent me a blog in which Mr. Hart, when asked about apparently a recent increase in the $10,000, I guess, that is currently paid to council members, that it was an extremely challenging job. So, and I certainly can understand that, because we all know how busy, how much is asked of these people. So I think that it is important for the board to put forward something either acknowledging that you understand that and/or taking another look at whether or not he should be serving in two functions. Thank you very much.
Marilyn Stolen. As most of you know, my career has been in vocational research, and so I've did a labor market survey, and I'm going to report on the conclusions of it, which comes to about 5 minutes, and copies of it will go to the board and to the ad hoc committee. A labor market survey was performed to determine if there are other combined positions for general manager, COP in the state and surrounding western states, and if they were identified, how they functioned. Focus was on job openings in California, since the California General Code would be applicable. However, a review of the labor market using a variety of resources did not yield any current or recent openings for GMCOP. I reviewed specialized public sector websites and websites for executive search firms that specialize in these positions. Over 100 advertised positions over a period of 4 to 5 weeks were reviewed, and as a result of this labor market survey, I've determined there are no current or recent openings for a combined general manager, chief of police position in California or the surrounding states. Job openings for non-combined positions were also reviewed for GM and COP on all of these websites to review the chain of command, and a number of town managers and executive search firms were contacted by me. Conflict of interest was cited by both a specialty recruiter, Joyce, and a city manager in Fairfax, Garrett Toy, as the primary reason that this type of position is not found in combined public safety and executive positions. The executive search recruiter had never seen a GM COP opening in 20 years. Another town manager in Burlingame, Lisa Goldman, said she was not aware of any combined permanent positions, that at times the COP acted as an interim manager and thought it would be hard for one person to do both jobs effectively. Lastly, and most importantly, I had lengthy conversations with Sean Robb, the town manager of Colma, who wrote to me that he had direct experience, working under a combined GM-COP position in Sutter Creek, and pointed out the ongoing poor governance problems with this arrangement and why it had to be abandoned in Sutter Creek prior to the recommendation of the grand jury investigation, as well as the town I own, which is nearby, that had also combined the position for budgetary reasons. Mr. Robb observed that it was hard for the COP, town manager, to quote-unquote serve two masters, the police department and the council. It is hard for the person to separate the COP and TM roles because the COP, quote, wants what's best for his men, end quote, and on the other hand, the officers ultimately, quote unquote, resent the TM role. Yet the TM needs to deal with fiscal, budget, and management concerns. He cited the major difference in management styles required for the two positions, an impossible dual allegiance to the police department and council, and the scope of the job being too large for one person to be effective. Most importantly, he said, there are clearly different skill sets required for each job, and that the COP is set up as a, quote, paramilitary style of leadership, end quote, i.e. law and order skills, which is not the same nor compatible with a city manager where the focus is on, quote, finance, management, HR-related issues. This, in combination with the realization that it was not good public policy to continue this, he said the position was separated and the town is currently on a better track. Now, I'll just have to add, he was working there after the positions were separated a little bit longer, several years, and then became town manager in Colma. So he's speaking from direct experience of working under a CMCOP from the inside. On the other hand, per the survey, there are combined positions that do not appear to be problematic for conflict of interest, where a professional may have two specialized areas of responsibility and duties, such as fire and EMT, town clerk and assistant town manager, or engineer and town manager, or even assistant vice president and chief of police on a college campus. However, in all cases referred to above, they are accountable to a higher supervisory level. In a few local towns, cities and towns, 3 city manager positions are combined, but it is with a city attorney or a city clerk or a town engineer, and there's no conflict of interest. They are Cloverdale, Sebastopol, and Corte Madera. In Muir Woods, the position can be combined with a secretary. In conclusion, there are few, if any, currently combined positions other than Broadmoor and Kensington, and considering the current, recent, and past publicized problems with Broadmoor, they're suing, the council members suing the police department, it does not appear to be a model of governance that can be promoted or emulated. In conclusion, a more common approach identified in the examples in this research survey for smaller towns in California is to have a town manager who works part-time, 3 to 4 days a week, or combine that position to create a full-time or 3/4 position with a city clerk. Example, Ms. Walters' administrative secretary position could be combined, or an attorney combined. The chief of police position in this survey, and I surveyed over 100 positions, in this survey is always a separate position when there is a standalone department. And each of you can get one of these.
Thank you for the information.
Celia Conkus. Last month, I spoke to the board and asked and gave examples of the proper use of the term interim to designate the position that we have now that Mr. Hart is filling. And I asked the board to look at the 3 examples that I gave, one from the academic world, one from the business world, and one from this community where Alma Key identified herself as the interim editor of the Outlook. I've asked that the board instruct our interim general manager, chief of police, to use the term interim. And I stated also that I do not wish to be disrespectful. It is simply the appropriate way to identify the position. And I have not heard during this month from anybody on the board. I have read an awful lot on Nextdoor. I am asking that you please instruct Mr. Hart in the proper use of his job title.
Actually, I want to address that comment, but I want to do it after everybody's finished. Is there anybody else who wants to comment? Mr. Riddle, could you just comment, first of all, on whether there's anything legally improper in the way the chief general manager has been characterizing himself to date?
No, I mean, there's nothing, I mean, his duties are his duties under the government code and under the contract, and there's no legal basis for him calling himself interim or not interim. That's not a legal issue. That's, a policy issue.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, I would like to add, if Mr. President. So I work for the community in Kensington, and if it's important to members of this community that I utilize that term of interim, then I will utilize that term as interim. It's not a hill that needs to be fought. We have many other issues that are important to the district and to the police department. So if you will see see my email. And in fact, I don't think I fixed it after you and I talked on email tonight. You'll see it that it says interim. So, all right? You bet.
Are you coming to comment? Sure, go ahead.
Linda Lipscomb, Highland Boulevard. I'd just like to say that what Mr. Riddle said is really important. There is no legal significance to attaching the term interim to the chief's position, and I think it's a disrespect to have him called interim. He is an employee with a contract serving in the position of general manager and chief of police. I understand there might be controversy in the community about whether or not there is or is not a conflict between those functions. But calling him interim to satisfy some kind of emotional need, it's ridiculous. You are the chief of police, you are the general manager of this district. We need a general manager of this district for it to exist, and you carry out your functions that way. So I object to the interim category.
It's not, it's done, okay? It's done. It's a done deal. So I would like to ask the board to comment now, if anybody has any comments on anything.
Sure. I think, Len, you would appreciate this, having worked in a large government agency, and I've served as a special appointee and also in an interim capacity, and have used those designations in correspondence and on business cards, because that's typically how it's done in the government sector. Just because it's legal doesn't make it good policy, and I actually thank interim GM COP Hart for acquiescing on this issue and doing what you can to instill confidence in our transparency efforts. So thank you.
Is that it? Okay. Yeah, we're in board member comments.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I misunderstood.
No, I'm sorry.
Ixnay.
No, it's time for us. Time for us.
I have no comment other than it's been a very remarkable year. As you know, Director Sheriff Watt and I were seated a year ago this week, and it goes by quite quickly. And I have no other comment other than have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you. Director Gillette.
So I have a really cool voice. I just want everyone to notice that, and a very bad cough, which I'll try to keep under control, because I can be irritating enough without my cough, but even more irritating with my cough. So this is my last year. I begin my last year on the board as of tonight. Some people may want to cheer that. Other people may not want to. But I want to take this time to thank the other members of the board, both this board and the board that preceded this board that I was part of, for the service that all of you do to the community. We don't always agree on everything, and we certainly have our differences in terms of how things should be approached. But it is an honor and a pleasure to serve the community in this way with other members of the community who feel strongly about issues. I also want to thank Chief and General Manager Hart, who, despite his responsibilities on the City Council of Dublin, I think, which we all knew about at the time we contracted with him to take this position, so there was nothing that he hid from us, Mr. Watt. I want to thank you for the wonderful service that you've given to this community. It's really been a pleasure to have someone who has the professional capabilities and approach that you have to work with us and move us in a new direction. And I thank you for that and really applaud your willingness to continue to serve and be part of our community and to keep your good spirit and inspire the people who work for you. I want to thank Lynn Walter, who is not an administrative secretary, who is in fact a district administrator, for all the very valuable work and contributions that she makes to this community. She's a highly skilled professional who has the willingness to work for us and with us to move the community forward. I want to thank our police officers, who I think are doing their best to serve the community that they care about, and for making it through the controversies that have faced us in the past couple of years. And then I want to thank the community. I want to thank those of you who have been supportive of the board, those of you who have criticized us and forced us to look at issues differently. I want to thank the people who express their opinions in a respectful way and that respect the opinions of others. I also want to call out Dr. Schwartzberg for being someone who I think really does try to see both sides of the issue. And though we don't always agree on everything, I think you do a nice job of trying to at least consider both sides of the issues. I think we have a lot of challenges ahead of us, and what I'm hoping in this time of peace that we have in December for all types of religious beliefs and even non-religious beliefs, that we can all come together and try to move forward in a spirit that used to characterize this community. I've lived here for 39 years. I grew up here, basically. My kids grew up here. I love Kensington. I don't love the way the communications have been going on next door and among us. I think it's divisive. I think the suspicion of bad intent that seems to permeate a lot of communications on Nextdoor in particular is unhealthy and not good for us. And so I would encourage all of us, myself included, to move forward with the spirit that characterizes our community and that reflects our core values, which is respect for each other, respect for intelligent discussion, dissension, etc. I want to say one other thing. A couple of people approached me about being president of the board next year. I turned that down. I turned it down for a whole bunch of reasons, but mostly because I thought I tend to be a lightning rod for a lot of people, and I didn't want to do that. So I respectfully declined those few people who asked me if I would do it, out of what I hope will be seen as a spirit of conciliation with the community. That doesn't mean that I will stop speaking up and stop expressing what I believe to be true from my point of view, what I believe to be good for the community. It doesn't mean that I will take a back seat in any way, but I do think that we need to do everything we can to bring this community back together and to move forward in a spirit that characterizes the Kensington that I used to know and hope will come back for the 39 years that I've lived here. Best wishes and happy holidays to everyone in the audience and to those listening on the tape for the new year.
Thank you for your very thoughtful comments. The only thing I would disagree with is whether you wouldn't make an excellent board president.
Thank you.
And I would even ask you to reconsider that now.
No, thank you.
Ms. Sheriswat, you have anything to say?
Yes. Okay. Hello, good evening. First, I wanted to highlight the Park Buildings Committee met on November 17th. We reviewed our seismic and ADA studies for the community center. We kind of went over some clarification for the committee and for any community members because we'd had some differing accounts and reports. Our to-do list is being checked off. On Tuesday, the roof and gutters of this building were cleaned, flashing was repaired, and cracks were patched in the roof in preparation for, well, I guess we were thinking the winter, but this afternoon it seemed to arrive full force. Hopefully none of you were out caught in the deluge. You'll also notice our spectacular new bulletin board there by the front door, ready for the ad hoc committee or KSEP to advertise upon it. Our next meeting will be next Wednesday, December 16th, 7 p.m. in room 3. So you're welcome to attend. We're going to discuss green technology and hopefully our ADA specialist will be able to attend. Unfortunately, she's not here tonight. 7 p.m. Did I not say? I'm sorry. 7 p.m.
So, Rochelle, I'm sorry, that's Wednesday, not Monday, correct?
Did I just say Wednesday?
Yes.
Yes, it's Wednesday, December 16th. We're in December. Okay. So that's Wednesday. A good time will be had by all, we hope. The questions asked during November's public comments, I wanted to just, many of them are in the minutes, and I wanted to let people know that the questions I had accumulated the conclusion, wondering about the conclusion of the Richmond investigation, our PDF format on the website, possible rescinding of the 2009 ordinance, and a discussion of employee structure. They're still on our radar, so I just wanted to let people know. But I can specifically answer questions about, Jim Watt asked two things. He asked about goals for 2016, which at the time were being reviewed by the law group, so we couldn't speak on them, but you'll see them in the agenda tonight. That's an item. And then you also brought up, and I'm sorry I didn't speak to you before about this, Jim, but Mr. Hart's role as city councilman. During the interview process, he was given verbal permission, and he has also received written confirmation that the board, so we would be outside acting outside our verbal agreement that was given in June as a board during the interview process. So.
Actually, if I could, I know that you gave written confirmation, and I appreciate that. I think perhaps if we all agree that that was part of the bargain, even though it wasn't in the written contract, it would probably be good for all of us to send a statement to the same effect that Rochelle did. That was a good move, and I appreciate that.
Well, I felt we'd be violating the spirit of the agreement that we made with him, that was made with him. Others may disagree.
Yeah, it was understood from the start. In fact, I think most of us thought it was an asset. But
so I apologize, though. I would have liked to disseminate that earlier, but I needed to ask Mr. Riddle if I could speak to the issue, so I'm sorry. It didn't come up before now. That's the conclusion of my comments.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chuck.
I have a couple of comments, too. First, I want to welcome the interim GM Chief of Police is too long to say. What shall we call you? I can call you Kevin. I can call you Mr. Hart.
I'm the interim chief of police and general manager, so
okay.
Call me whatever you want to call me, director.
Interim chief.
I like the IGM. It sounds very upstate.
Sounds like,
well,
technical.
You sell pancakes, too? Actually, I was going to make this comment before Celia stood up, but I really do think it's important to call Kevin what his role is, which is interim GM Chief of Police. That's just kind of what it is. That is not in derogation of the high esteem I hold you, and I think you're doing a terrific job. And I really think you've earned your stars, not stripes, stars. So I just want to say, just like I am Director Toombs, not Toombs, or you, he is interim GM Chief of Police Hart, or as we will now call him, Kevin. Or something manageable. I just can't say that long word.
It may just be easier just to call me chief.
Well, that may not be correct. But I do think it's appropriate to use that term, interim, because that is what the job title is. What happens in the future happens in the future. For now, we have an interim role, and that's fine. And again,
maybe we could distinguish between what is written and what is said verbally. Maybe that would take care of it.
You're putting too many angels on the head of a pin.
So for clarity, my suggestion, directors, would be the chief is fine, all right, but in light of the comments that have been said by the community, all correspondence out of my office from this point forward will now articulate the difference. And during these kind of meetings, let's make life easy and just say chief, but for correspondence to outside agencies, I'll make sure that its interim is noted.
Correspondences to the community or whatever else you sign, that'd be fine. The second thing relates to something that actually Marina and I were talking about yesterday, which was the traffic issue in town. And I think at the end of it, one of the things I said, which was that, Marina was saying, well, I'm waiting for the board to tell us how it's going to fix this problem. And my response was, it's not just the board's problem, it's the entire community's problem. We need to develop a new set of priorities and principles about how we're going to drive through our very neighborhoods. And we need to have some thought about no one gets a free bite of the apple. Everybody's subject to a ticket if they're speeding or endangering anybody else's life, and that's just the way it is. But the point here, the takeaway is, it's all of our problems to solve, not just the five of us, not just the chief, but everybody in this room and everybody in this community. And it does take changing your mind about how you're going to drive through what we consider very narrow, small, tiny streets. I did enjoy the conversation with you, by the way. I wanted to say thank you. I enjoyed your comments and I enjoyed the discussion, so thank you. The third thing is we do have a lot of loose ends. Rochelle mentioned some of them, but there's a bunch of things that are still kind of piling up and we aren't closing the gap on them. Corrections to the minutes. I know that Lenny's had some concerns about the minutes not being appropriately reflected. We're trying to find a way to do that. We still haven't come to grips with how we're going to do that. The 5-year projections that Adam and our accountant were going to work on still need to be done. We still need to finish up these reports and investigations that Kevin started to do. And we need to work on action minutes. Those are just a few of the things. So, I mean, we kind of need to tighten our belts and push through those issues and take them off the minutes, because I keep on circling the minutes here of things that are carrying forward we haven't finished yet. So I'd like to see us kind of, if nothing else, start and finish those pretty darn quick. The rest of it, Pat, I'm sorry to see you won't be president, but that's a personal decision. And thank you for your service to our community. You've done a marvelous job, and you still have a year left. So, oh dear. And thank you all for coming out tonight. It's a cold night. It's rainy and wet. Thank you all for coming out.
All right, the district administrator I'm going to take staff comments out of order here, had something she wanted to say.
Question with respect to interim general manager, chief of police. Of course, that's going to be a lot of extra typing. So if you could provide some guidance as to how you'd like me to refer to the interim general manager, chief of police in the minutes, I would appreciate it.
I think exactly that way.
Got it. Thank you.
Could she not list it once at the beginning as interim and written out, and then from then on IGM/COP? We'd all understand lowercase I, lowercase, I mean, I don't want to make light of it or...
Hereinafter referred to as?
Yeah, one of those.
Chief.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Why don't we just put chief in parentheses afterwards?
Well,
that's shorter.
He's operating as a general manager within certain duties, so I just, acknowledge the dual role.
With all we have on our plate, my suggestion would be that Lynn and Lynn maybe come up with, my suggestion, I only have one vote, my suggestion would be that Lynn and Lynn come up with a way to refer to it. I don't think this is the most important issue we have to consider.
No, it's not.
Thank you.
All right, so I just wanted to say that we have finally gotten our opinion from council on the issue of whether the combination of general manager and chief of police presents a conflict of interest. Unfortunately, we got it a day after the time we needed to notice that for discussion at this meeting tonight. So we're going to hold a special closed session next week, next Monday, to officially vote on whether to release the report. And we want to have that session right away because if things go the way I think they're going to go, that it's going to give lots of people time to have a look at it before the January meeting. So we will be meeting Monday. That's why I was asking Rochelle about Wednesday, because I thought you were saying we had to finish by 7 if we met on Monday.
Wednesday. I'm hoping.
But Monday works for you for a closed session?
I could.
Okay, so 6 o'clock Monday for a closed session on...
Where will it be?
That's a good question. We'll have to work that out. The notice will go out tomorrow and be posted tomorrow on the website. We'll probably do it back there.
My recollection is from looking at the calendar yesterday, the Cub Scouts are in this room, so you'll need to meet in the conference room.
Okay.
And then just for clarification, Mr. President, it's my understanding that I'm not needed, so...
That's correct.
So I get a pass for that night, then?
Yes, you can pass. We'll need Lynn to take notes for us.
Sure.
I just want to echo somewhat Pat's a lot, actually, Pat's sentiments. It's been a hard year, but I think we've made a lot of progress in trying to patch up some of the things that have haunted us over the last several years. I look forward to continuing to make progress in the issues that still face us, and I have confidence that this community can come together, get over our disagreements, and come to reasonable consensus on the best way to move forward with the things we're faced with. So I personally am thankful for having had a good year. I'm thankful for living where we live, especially when I listen to the news about what's going on just about all over the world. I think we're very fortunate to be here, and we're fortunate to be in a situation where people get to speak out so much and participate so directly in their government. So that's all I have to say. Let's get on with the meeting. Staff comments, we got some. I don't know if you have more to add.
I just have a couple, Mr. President, just to add to, in addition to my report, those items that both Director Toombs has identified, as well as Director Rochelle Watts, also Sharice Watson, I apologize, are on my radar screen for purposes of getting accomplished. Randy and I are meeting next week relative to some of the finer points of minutes, relative to a better way to potentially do it based on his experience as well. And all the projects that have been listed are on my radar as well. I was trying to give the holidays December meeting a little bit of a break. One of the major issues that obviously in January, potentially February, would be the zero tolerance issue. We have a few that are coming back tonight, obviously, that are pretty heavy items already, so I didn't want to overbear the board on a December board meeting. But I would like to add that last night we had graduation for the Citizen Academy, and as already mentioned, the Citizen Academy graduation, I would like to formally recognize those individuals that attended the Citizen Academy in January. If the boards will give me that benefit to do that. They do put in a lot of time, a lot of effort. I've lost count, I'm told, of the number of questions that were asked, and I think that's such a great thing. I think they had great dialogue. They had some interesting dialogue and some interesting perspective, and I think that a lot of that will come out as time goes on. But I want to thank those people that attended for the effort, the energy, and the time that they put in to the effort, and I'd like to formally recognize them in January relative to their graduation. And I think that's, one major issue that I just want to make sure that the community and the board is aware of, and I think everyone knows, we are in a consortium, all right, for our reporting system, our records and report system, our CAD and RMS system. We're in the same group as Richmond, San Pablo, El Cerrito, Pinole, Hercules. We all share one, I'll use one server, and I'm not a computer guy, so forgive me, but for simplicity, I'll just describe it this way. Lack of better words, as they were trying to back it up and copy the data, it compromised some of the files. So we have lost some files. They're trying to rebuild the files, but we've lost some data points at this point. We're good up to, I think, December 7th, but we're not sure about anything. There's a gap. So there are a lot of people working on this. I don't know, I'm sorry, I didn't mention Richmond. Richmond is the lead agency on this, but it is a major issue. I attended a meeting yesterday in reference to the problems and the issues to try to make sure there was it's important to all of the agencies. So I just want to make sure that if we're, our records, for lack of better words, and our report forms may be a little bit late, but it's a significant issue that they're trying to work very hard on, and there's smarter people than me that are trying to work on.
What kind of files are we talking about, just for clarity?
We're talking about police reports, we're talking about activity reports, we're talking about anything that's put into a computer system for retrieval purposes.
And so this is this problem all of these jurisdictions are
Correct.
facing right now.
So all of the problems had this catastrophic failure. that they're rebuilding the system. As they were trying to copy the system, and it encrypted something into it, and it blew up and went down. We could not even, at some point, for I think 3 to 4 days, we couldn't even log into the system. That doesn't mean that we didn't take reports. We continued to take reports. We continued to automate it or do it paper-wise. It just was not automated. They're now starting to rebuild the system back up as much as possible. But they're pretty significant. I may talk about more of it if it has a significant impact. If not, just a warning
Well,
shot.
let us know next meeting.
Absolutely.
You mentioned you were negotiating over leftover WestNet funds. Did you make any progress on that issue?
We're meeting again in January, and so I have nothing to report yet at this point, but we're in progress.
Okay, so just so the audience knows what we're talking about, we used to be participating in the County WestNet program,
Correct.
and there may be some funds left over that will be returned to us from that, and we don't know whether
Right.
there are and how much, but we're looking into that issue.
Right. So what that generates was that came from asset forfeitures, and it's court process, it's conviction, it's all this other stuff that's trailing behind. All the agencies that were involved have those funds that are potentially would be dispersed. So we're talking about any agency that participated, and of course we participated in that. Up to this point, they've been waiting, suggesting originally, whenever they disbanded WestNet, whatever date that was, the chiefs at the time agreed to wait until all the cases were adjudicated before they distributed the funds, which could be 5-10 years from now. I don't know. All right. There is significant dollars. In the meantime, Chief Magnus from Richmond, who is the main signer on the account, for lack of better words, as most people know from the media, is leaving his duties. So we're meeting on that. I suggested at last meeting that we distribute the funds now and let the 2 or 3 cases that are pending catch up to themselves whenever that is in a year, 18 months or 2 years from now. I can tell you that there's significant dollars in the account. I cannot tell you what our percentage would be per se, because it'll be based on our interaction and involvement in it, and everyone's a little bit different. In other words, some people had officers part-time, some officers had full-time, some agencies, had a part-time and periodically. So all that has to be worked out. I'm pushing that we do it sooner rather than later. So, and then the last thing I just want to forewarn you is that it's going to be a busy year, 2016, for the district in and of itself. We have departmental policies that I'll bring back to the board for review. All right, we'll have operational policies that I'd like to have work with Randy and staff, and I know that it's been done before I drove up. A lot of work has been done on operational orders for the board. I'd like to bring those back and get those done. At a minimum, there are several that need to be updated pursuant to the law changes, so we need to bring those back. We've got all the things that's already been mentioned by two of the directors tonight as well. It's going to be a busy 2016 for the board. Hopefully we can be expeditious and efficient in our time, and as well as being transparent. As we know, there's other cases that I've got, investigations that was mentioned that we're working on as well. So it'll be a busy 2016.
May I ask a question?
In other words, don't hate me if you're here till 10:30, 11 o'clock, because there's some things I'm putting on the agenda to try to get through, because I think we need to review those policies and operational orders.
Okay, we stand warned.
One of the items that was left off the list is the mid-year review of the budget, which would be a task for January. That's not included on the chief's list, so is the... okay. All right. That's critical.
It seems like it might be helpful to have a running list of things that we've left undone so that we can make sure we follow up on them. Is that
Yeah, why don't we
something that we could have
present that
attached
for
to
the
the
next
minutes?
meeting?
Thank you.
All right, our next item, yes.
More
Oh,
staff
I'm sorry.
comments.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I want to apologize in advance if you're getting to the consent calendar. I made a mistake in the attendance portion of the minutes, and I failed to follow Director Cordova's name with the title Director. I apologize. As Dr. Schwartzberg said, oh, cut and paste. Well, yes, cut and paste caused the problem, and I apologize. Then secondly, I'm pleased to report that we received loss prevention allowance reimbursements from the SDRMA. One of our employees has a back problem and needed to have a desk that he could either sit at or stand at. And that desk was ordered, and I submitted a proposal to SDRMA, and we have been awarded $1,000. Then lastly, I wanted to say that we received a report from PG&E, and it told us that we are good in our use of energy here. So I'll pass that on to Director Shara-Swat.
Thank you.
Lynn, before you go, one question on the meeting minutes at the very top of the, I don't want to pull this off the consent list, I just want to point out a mistake. On page 3, the very top, you say the meeting was Thursday, October 8th. It was actually November 12th. Can you see that? That's square on page 3. Second line, services district was held
in the box.
Thursday, October 8th. It was actually November 12th, wasn't it? Am I reading these right?
Yeah, that looks like a cut and paste error.
It was a cut and paste error. I apologize for that as well.
Hey, actually, before we get to the consent calendar, we have calendared here an update on the Ad Hoc Committee on Governance, and I'm wondering if we ought to combine that with the item after the consent calendar, which goes back into the Governance Committee and some related issues. So let's jump over that and go to the consent calendar. Would anybody like to discuss any of these items before we vote on adopting it?
Really quickly, could I just pull item B, the unaudited profit and loss?
Just, yeah, I'm sure other people are going to want to discuss other items. So item B, anybody else?
Once the minutes are posted, I cannot correct them or make any changes to them whatsoever. Only the board has the authority to do that. And just so you know, the item that you submitted to the board at the last meeting appears under correspondence in this month's board packet.
Your summary of what I said. So here's an example. I submitted, I have spoken, I then created action minutes for Lynn.
Yeah, can I ask, can you go to the microphone so it can be heard?
So I thought that's what she was going to use. When I read it, it misrepresented it because a major portion of what I talked about was how many times people have requested that the GMCOP be placed on the agenda. 8 times, now 9, because I sent an email, so it's 9 times since at least 2007 or 2009. But Lynn wrote several times. Several is 2 or 3. Several is not 8 times. So I think it's important to keep the history correct because this is a major issue for this board. The general manager COP combined position has not been discussed as an agenda item in many years. And I need the minutes to reflect that. If someone goes back and reads it, they're going to see it says several times it was requested. It's not several times.
We got it.
It's 8 times.
All right, so we will amend the minutes to reflect that, or we'll make a motion to do that as part of this discussion, I imagine. Any other items besides B? Okay, Chuck?
Okay. I'm reading at page 17 here. This will be really quick. I wanted to commend you, by the way, on your variance report. Most of the questions I had were answered by the variance report. The only question I'd like to still see done is, it's a little difficult to go back and forth between the report and this, and somehow, I'd love to see footnotes that key the report comment directly to the actual tables here. It's just easier to look at, I can go right down at the bottom and see the footnote rather than try to fiddle where the variance report is. Really quickly, 401, the actual levy tax to date is 1.444 million. Budget is 1.527. That's a big chunk of money. I'm just curious if that's because they miscalculated the property tax rather, or they just haven't paid it all, or what? No. Look, item 401, the levy tax.
We get a true up in January.
Oh, okay. That answers that then.
They're waiting to see who's paid their taxes today.
So on your earlier point, Chuck, so
Well, I anticipate the 681.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Contra Costa County is very clear about that. They cover the ones that are delinquent, but this is Contra Costa, but they also reap the benefits from penalties, for lack of better words. So that number is that I anticipate is the 681 figure.
So we'll get paid. It's not just the 681; it's the number above it, actually, the levy tax.
Correct.
But the point is,
we'll get the true up in January.
That's fine. Quickly here on the franchise fees, 448. Looks like we're about running half of what we're owed. I scooped Rochelle, so.
No, we just have the same question. I'm going
Yeah.
to let you go, and then I might be done.
The franchise fees are lagging behind the budgeted year to date, and I was just curious if there was a reason for that.
I believe it's a timing issue. The contract became effective September 1st.
Oh.
I believe we receive the franchise fees on a basis of maybe 3 times a year. I think we receive 3 times a year. And so I think it's just a difference between the allocation that Deborah Russell made when she put together the year-to-date budget amounts and entered them into the system.
Okay. Very quickly here, most of the comments on page 18 were actually answered by your variance report, so I'm not going to drag you through that. And the only other one I had was on the 890 waste recycle. The actual is 1212, and the year-to-date budget is 17,600. And I was just curious, do you see that? That's on page 20 for those of you who have a copy of this.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that one. Let me check and see if there's something more to this than we need to know. It may have been an allocation for some sort of legal work or something else. I'm not sure.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're paying or getting paid on schedule, whether it's an expense or whether it's revenue to us.
Absolutely. I'll research that and provide the answer at next month's meeting, or I'll provide it to you sooner if you'd like.
Okay. Rochelle?
No, I think you've answered everything that I've done.
So just back to the first point Chuck raised. Can we maybe have a policy of putting an asterisk by every item that's got a variance report? Is that possible?
What I'm thinking I can do is just number them, and the numbers that will be handwritten on the P&L report, because I can't make any notations in the P&L report itself. So what I can do is make a little handwritten number adjacent to each item that's referred to in the variance report, and have the variance report number match that.
Lynn, you don't think there's a way to put a footnote into this puppy?
I don't know how to do that. Perhaps
Is this
Debbie does. It's a QuickBooks.
I mean, I can show you. I know it can be done.
Can't you just handwrite an asterisk by the item?
I can handwrite an asterisk. I can handwrite a number that would correspond to the number item on the variance report.
think what Chuck is saying is it'd be nice if it were at the bottom of the page, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's easier
Yes,
to
I could
to
handwrite
scan
it at the
down.
bottom of
No,
the
I mean,
page, but it's just going to be
the actual comment itself. For example, that first levy tax 401.
Yes.
If you would, as a lawyer, we footnote lots of stuff in briefs and everything else, and footnoting it here and then looking at the very bottom to see what the footnote refers to is really easy and efficient. Having to flip through the pages to find the variance report's a little trying for me.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
It's just a,
If I can learn how to do that, I am happy to do it.
okay, thanks.
Okay, any other items in the...
Carl, did you want to comment on the...
You
your
look like you
standing
do.
up? He's racing to the mic, folks.
I would like to thank management and staff for the 12 line items that were explained, so I can look at them. I don't have to complain about them all the time that they are not there. And if you look at my face, you see I'm happy, and when I'm happy, I sit down and keep my mouth shut. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we need a motion to amend the minutes to reflect what Ms. Stolen asked for, which was a correct depiction of the number of times the request has been made. Do I have a second for that motion?
Just so I know, what page of the minutes are we looking at with that?
Page 5, the second paragraph from the bottom, it seems to me. And the middle of the paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines up from the bottom, 3 words in.
The line
Said
reads...
the word, the agenda, she said,
She had said the board put this on the agenda several times in the past, and what she asked for was to quote the exact number that she claimed. Okay, did I get that right?
so we're going to make a motion to...
Yeah, can we, did you want to comment on this, Leonard, or something else?
On the business about amending the minutes.
Well, can we take care of this first?
Sure.
So I'm moving to amend the minutes, as I said, to reflect the exact number that Ms. Stolen had given.
Amend and approve?
What's that?
Amend and approve?
Yes. Do I have a second?
I'm sorry. Approved as amended.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion passes.
Now, just to be clear, that also approved the consent calendar?
No, just that one item. We
Chuck,
have...
you mentioned my agenda issue. Could you clarify a little what you're saying?
Trying to talk about was, I'm sorry, let me get this. There's this whole notion about how do we reflect changes to minutes, and we haven't come to grips with what technical means we're going to use to do that. We can't change the scope of what was typed. We have to come up with basically an errata sheet or some other way to link, maybe a hyperlink from this page to a changed page where someone can readily look it up online. We haven't come to that technical endpoint, though. I don't know what the answer is to doing it.
That's been suggested before, and that would be acceptable to me if there was a hyperlink by the incorrect minutes that would indicate that they were incorrect or that they had been amended, and that would take someone. Pardon?
It would take you to a corrected, an errata page or an addenda page that has the corrected minutes as approved by the board.
That would be perfectly acceptable.
Well, that's fine. We're just trying to.
Can I offer an alternative? And I hate pointing to KMAC all the time, but when we had minutes from the previous meeting attached to an agenda, the minutes were always called draft minutes. And when we convened and reviewed the minutes from the previous meeting, if there was an amendment like tonight, we'd make the amendment and then approve, and then the draft would be dropped, and the approved minutes would appear on Supervisor Joya's website. But the minutes always first appeared on the website with the agenda for the next meeting as draft.
So then if I understand correctly, that you're saying that the entire amended minutes would appear where the unamended minutes appear now?
Is that...
No, that all, that we have an agenda packet tonight, for instance. The minutes from last month's meeting would appear on this agenda as draft minutes from November's meeting. Yeah. And if there was a change, we would approve those draft minutes as final minutes. And, I mean, the county supervisor has asked us to do it that way with KMAC, so I imagine it's...
Well, my only concern is that the minutes, and they are draft minutes, you're right about that, really. They're proposed minutes that go into the agenda, but that is a public record, so I have a little bit of concern about whether that's legal.
Hence my statement, we haven't come to a conclusion yet on it.
Maybe, Randy, could you?
Well, let me...
The difference is you're not going to be changing what was in, you're not going to be changing the packet. The packets that's on the website's going to remain the same. There's going to be either a reference added to it, you know, in terms of where to look for it, or else, you know, you just have a separate drop-down menu of approved minutes on the website, if that can be done technologically. But as Kevin mentioned, Chief mentioned, we're going to be talking about and hopefully resolving that next week.
But the issue Dr. Schwartzberg is raising is that right now the minutes are in the board packet. The proposed minutes are in the board packet. And you know, if people are just going to look at the proposed minutes, they're not going to know what portions of them were deemed to be incorrect and then corrected later on in the amended minutes.
That's correct. My concern is that someone looking at what are, in fact, the draft minutes, but are not called the draft minutes, would have no way of knowing what was amended and what was not amended.
So what I'm concerned about is, you know, actually making part of the original board packet disappear.
No, and I don't think that's what we're talking about. I mean, the way other jurisdictions do it, if you can do it technologically, is just have a separate part on the website that says approved minutes.
We have that.
And that's
We
where
already
you would
have
look
that.
for
No, you have
the
amended
actual
minutes.
final.
Well, those are approved. The amended minutes are approved.
That's not what Randy's saying, I don't think.
I think you would have, yeah, because I think that only contains minutes that have been amended. So if you made no amendments to the minutes, then you would still go back and look at the
I see what
packet.
you're saying. I see what you're saying.
And this would just say approved minutes, and you would have a drop. And again, I don't know if this is technologically possible. That's why the chief and I are talking next week about this and what's possible, what's not. We understand the issue, and we're committed to trying to get it fixed.
Well, it seems to me the section that has the final, whether they were amended or whether they remained exactly the same, could be labeled approved minutes, approved or amended minutes, either one, okay? Approved minutes, or a note saying some of them may have been amended. What Dr. Schwartzberg is looking for is some indication in the board packet minutes
that they're draft.
That a particular line item there was changed, like the one that Ms. Stolen was referring to. And again, I guess I'm stuck on asterisks, but seems to me it would be simple enough to go back and asterisk a portion of the board packet minutes. So you're adding something to the original document, but you're not altering it really. You're just putting an asterisk there, and then you know that portion was amended.
You can either do that, or you can have something on at the beginning of the draft minutes every time that says, for the final minutes, go to the following link.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, I feel like we need to be communicating with people that when you're looking at the historical record, please do not wade through the packet. This is the only thing that counts. This is the only record that counts, is the final approved minutes. Anything in the packet is...
What would satisfy me is the equivalent of a Post-it note next to the incorrectly reported minutes of my statement that says, this statement has been amended, go to see the corrected minutes or the approved minutes.
Well, that's a technological question, whether or not our link does that, and whether our web,
It can be done because it's been done on the approved on the amended minutes.
So when you go to the county supervisor's county clerk's page, there are 3 columns. One is the agenda, the other is a link to the video, and the other is the minutes. And the PDF for minutes, or that link, is titled draft, and then when they're approved, the word draft is removed from the title of that document.
But then you don't see the original document anymore.
Go ahead, Chex.
I was just going to say, would you guys mind if we deferred this discussion?
Yeah,
for a
please.
moment? I think we're getting too deep into the weeds here. And Leonard, my point to you is, we're still trying to, as you can see, we're trying to wrap our arms around how to find a solution.
Let me
Okay,
see if I can
you know,
work with Lynn on this and the chief.
It now
Right.
sounds like there is some serious consideration of how to do this. It hasn't felt that way to me in the past. The minutes in question are from last February, and they appeared in the March packet, and I objected at that time. And we're still not dealing with what seems to me like a pretty simple issue.
Stay tuned.
Let's see what we can come up with for January, okay? All
I'll
right,
be happy to do that.
Any other item in the consent calendar? If not, we've already made one amendment. Do I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar as is, other than that amendment?
I move we adopt the consent calendar.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Chief, would you brief us on 5A, old business? No, I thought we would move that. That's coming up next. Unless you want to move it.
So as the board may remember, last month we had a discussion on revising the fees, the rental fees for the community center and other district facilities. We had not, our research had reviewed that we had not updated those fees in multiple years. 14, I think, to be specific. But it was something that I think that it had to be evaluated and should be evaluated in order to meet certain standards. And my goal to try to put money back into the community center and be reasonable at the same time. So we've kind of did a breakdown relative to all those fees, which I'm looking for. But I think we have a resolution. If I can find it. So we have, within the community park and rental fees, this time we have it broken down, because in other words, what we have found over the years, and I can't tell you why this hasn't been done in several years, but here's what I can tell you, that there's been discussion over the years, and that is that if you rent the community center, and these are both for residents that are, these are community residents as well as outside residents, and as a lot of people know, community center is rented pretty regularly on the weekends. So when you rent the community center, you get, essentially, you get a grass area, you get a garden area, you get a barbecue, you get community center, you get individual rooms, you get chairs, you get tables, you get all this stuff, and all for one price. So we wanted to at least be equal to what other communities are doing, as well as look at our fees. And what my goal behind this is to up the amount of rentals potentially for receptions, wedding receptions, whatever the circumstances are. So I'd like to buy some, round tables versus these tables, and just kind of upgrade it as much as we possibly can. And I think we've already had some discussion relative to ADA compliance, but that's a whole other issue. But we're working on the concept. So we broke down several different items, the different rooms, the amphitheater, the barbecue, having an alcohol permit. For those who want to serve alcohol on here, there was a cost in reference to going to ABC. But yet we never obtained any of that. We just said, okay, go to ABC. So we're trying to capture that aspect. We're trying to be mindful of the fact that it's a community center and that it should be for a place for people that can rent it, but at the same time pay for the cost. And the cost essentially that we have on a daily or monthly basis do not exceed what our costs are on a daily basis for rental. So we're losing money. And I'm advocating that we at least, as we did last time, raise the fees to a conservative amount equal to other, in comparison to other communities, and recommend that the resolution be approved as presented.
Actually, just to correct you, you aren't proposing a resolution tonight for the community center. You're proposing to bring one back in January.
Oh.
The police services one is the one you're going to do a resolution tonight on.
Yeah.
Could have used a little nudge on that one. I apologize. So we have two of them. Did you?
It's the painkiller.
All right.
So I
Actually, I dropped the painkillers. Maybe I should go back to the painkillers.
Do you mind if I jump in for a second before you speak? So, we tabled this discussion last month. There was some feedback that there was some confusion in following the comparisons and trying. This is difficult because so much of these things become apples and oranges. So, and I apologize if I don't have a copy of this for everyone, but I'm happy to make one for folks. So I did a rental comparison chart there's some more information, these two documents don't exactly match. And there's some things here that, or on this, in the board packet that are not listed here. I didn't add picnic areas, didn't break that out. But you'll see in the comparison charts that things are a little bit difficult to match exactly, because if you look at a rental of Camp Herms, they rent just by the day. So you can break that down depending on what type of event you're throwing, whether that party is going to actually, you only need 4 hours, or you would actually benefit by having a full 8 hours. And it's difficult to know. I happen to know that Camp Herms has a full commercial kitchen. It's enormous and usable by a full staff. So some of these things are going to be a little bit difficult to compare. Their prices look very high, but it might be for what that particular need is. So I just wanted to explain. And if anyone has any corrections on this document, please, I'm happy to note them.
Could I ask Mr. Hart, excuse me, your numbers here, are these, for example, the community center at 125 under residents for proposed increase?
That's proposed.
That's proposed. Is
Correct.
that by the hour, or is that for the full 4 hours? These are hourly rates?
That's the hourly rate for 4-hour minimum.
Okay.
So if I'm looking at how much it would cost to rent this whole area, I would have to add up the 125 plus the 35 plus the 20 plus the 55.
That is correct.
All that. So you'd end up paying somewhere, I can't do that math that fast, but 50, around $300, $250 to rent the whole thing per hour.
It might, yeah, when you look on the chart, it's a kind of a mix and match, right? Then you have costs of, you could add side rooms as you would like. You could add the kitchen in the proposed rental is simply a flat rate, as is the barbecue and the grassy area out front. So those are each for a 4-hour period, whereas the other rooms are by the hour. So
I have another. I'm sorry. I have another question, Kevin. They don't need insurance if they're serving alcohol.
Oh yeah, they need insurance.
That's my
They
question.
do. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, so that
Because it
would
says
be
insurance required no on Michelle's chart, so that's not right.
I'm sorry, that was my
Yeah, we-
mistake. They need insurance for that.
And is there a cleaning?
There's a cleaning deposit.
Okay.
Yeah, and we take it in cash. Also, this does not affect any of the K groups. This is just for, it's an area, now that is an area that I'd like to bring back to the board, maybe a subcommittee of the board, to have some discussion, because I think anybody and everybody has a key to this place, all right? And anybody and everybody is in here and out here at all hours of the night. And the cop in me is, we need to control that. We need to change the locks and then issue out. I can't tell you how many keys that are out there. And I bet you there are people in here that have been around for a while. I got a key. I don't want to know. All right? So I think we just need to clean that up, quite frankly. And I think try to do this all at one time.
Can I ask
Go behind it.
It's my understanding that we cannot cook in that kitchen. That's my understanding, that it wasn't up to code, that we can have food there, but we can't actually use that kitchen because it's not recognized as a standard commercial kitchen.
Well, they have cooking classes for KSEP currently, so currently you can.
Only kids can cook.
Yeah, under 12.
And the reason I ask is that someone had a bat mitzvah here, and I think I was speaking with one of the proprietors along the Arlington who has a cafe, who says that in her contract or agreement with this particular facility, she's not allowed to actually cook.
Oh, that I do not know.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if, it was my understanding that that's the policy, so.
That's a new one on me.
Okay, so then we should look at a contract to see what the current contract, because I don't have a signed.
And again, that's part of the problem. There have been things that have either gone on for a number of years or not gone on for a number of years. I mean, I think that there is a cooking class without question here that is done by the K groups, but for the outside, a lot of people have asked to use the fireplace, which we won't let them do. I'm not familiar personally if the kitchen, someone wants to do some minor cooking. I mean, people that come and rent the place look at it and they see what it is for what it is. So it's not your gourmet kind of a kitchen place, and they know that. So they either rent it or they don't, or they cater. And I think a lot of the times what I've seen is it's catered, so they use it as a kitchen, but it's not necessarily for preparing food, it's more prepping for food. So as I stand corrected, if the board so chooses, a resolution will come back on this item. I apologize, I have a resolution for the police fees based on last month's direction.
So do you want us to give you any comments on
what's
proposed here then? So
well, I mean, you certainly can, absolutely. I mean, we try to do a comparison. We raised it to a certain level of cost of living, as well as a combination of comparison fee-wise. And I think what you'll also find is, if and no one's asked this question yet, so I'll just put it out there, is that picnic tables, as an example, we get no less than a half a dozen requests a week to rent picnic tables. Every other jurisdiction rents their picnic tables. And what this means is rent/reserve would be the better way to say it. Rather than get here, as I know my wife has, and some of probably members of the community would do in years past, if you got a birthday party for little Johnny, you're going to get there at the park at 6 o'clock and reserve your table and pick your table out. What nowadays environment is that reserve it. Put a sign on it, the entity puts a sign on it, you pay the certain amount, and it's reserved on it, and it's enforced pursuant to a policy and so forth. So people are not having to get there at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning to stake out their table. They reserve it, they pay for a fee. And this is, quite frankly, just absolutely lost revenue that the district could be receiving that other districts and communities and cities have already been doing for a number of years.
So how did you come up with the number 73 and 92? Those just seem like weird numbers to me.
That was just an average of, quite frankly, an average taken of all of the other communities that we did. We did El Cerrito, I think we did Richmond, we did Berkeley, Albany, and we took an overall average, what it was, to be fair.
So when you're referring to the picnic area with the barbecue, you're referring to
correct
that table, but there's no fee listed for tables by themselves, because on the far side of the park by the tennis courts are several picnic tables, and so
no, that's what it infers. I can clean that up when we do that, but it's a picnic table, and you get the barbecue. It's $73 a day for the rental of a picnic table.
Okay, that I have to say is rather high. And it seems that a picnic area, I mean, just because I think people are going to want to rent that hourly.
But let me be clear about one thing, though. All right, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. If it's not reserved, then it's yours for free. This is only for people that choose to reserve the picnic table. So if you come up and on a Saturday and you want to have a party for little Johnny, all right, and the picnic table is not reserved, you get it for free. You're not paying any cost. This is only for those people in advance that don't want to have to come back and wait it out at 6 o'clock in the morning and wait their picnic table out.
No, but I'm thinking that if perhaps we charge $20 an hour, that there will be people who want to have a children's party from 11 to 1 or 11 to 2, and then someone else wants to have the party from 2 to 6 or something like that, so you actually end up with more revenue.
Director, that's really hard to police, because what happens if the party lasts an hour later?
You just
And
want to have
yeah, it's
a day.
it's a day, and you get the barbecue. And what I'd like to do, if this is approved, this will bring obviously some projected revenue in there. What I'd like to do is add a few additional barbecues and some picnic tables to the area. We just cleared out the area here. Is another opportunity for some additional picnic tables. It's a beautiful area. We cleaned it all out, as everyone knows, once it dries, so forth. That's another area that's a beautiful area that people will pay $73 to reserve their picnic table. This is only for reserving. So if you walk up and the picnic table has no reserve markings on it, then you get it for free.
And the barbecues you're talking about are those metal things that you see in other parks? Yeah.
Yeah, correct. And I'd like to buy a few more, because there's a few that are, and I know that Lisa Cordova's in the, Corona's in the office, or in the room as well, but there's a few that do not have picnic tables. So I want to try to fix it, for lack of a better word.
Firstly, I'm sorry to interrupt you. What is the rule about using barbecues right now for fire safety? Now it's winter, but I mean, in a drought, are we allowed to use? I know that in Tilden Park, you're not always allowed to use.
Yeah, in our picnic areas, within the confined picnic tables, our fire marshal does not have a problem with briquettes.
I have some mixed feelings about increasing the rate to rent this facility. And I don't mean this disrespectfully, but the centers that you're comparing this venue to are quite nice and a little more ambient. And while I recognize the need to increase revenue, I don't want to outprice us. I want folks to feel that they're getting something for their dollar. And when I look at Albany, I mean, it's a beautiful facility. I don't know what the solution is, but I just don't want us to increase the rate to such a level that we're going to send folks to other venues because, they...
The non-quantitative data, for lack of better words, Director, is that we have been, to some degree, behind the times for a number of years. I did have a conversation with my predecessor, and he just quite frankly says it's not an issue he wanted to address in raising fees. But I do not anticipate, at a minimum, a drop. In fact, I anticipate an increase in revenue. I don't know to what degree, but I should obviously have some kind of a slight increase of revenue based on the rentals. But I will tell you that we've had beautiful parties here, beautiful weddings, beautiful receptions just in the time that I've been here. And they're very happy because the price is very low for the area. And it's a gorgeous view.
I think the other, you make a good point, and it's not just increasing the rate, it's increasing awareness that you can have a beautiful event here. And I'm wondering, from a marketing perspective, what that approach looks like. Are you in wedding guides? Are we memorializing these events with a photo album that's available to interested parties who call and want to know what's available here? I mean, what are we doing on the marketing side?
I will tell you that we are not to that degree yet. However, I will tell you that we've gotten multiple calls for 2016, and Andrea, who everyone knows that also works in the office, is asking me, what do I do about the fees? Because if we're getting all these requests, what should I tell them about the fees? And I say, tell them that it's proposed. They can reserve it knowing that it's anticipated to potentially raise. If the board chooses to not raise it, they get the lower rate. But we get a number of requests and reservations. So I think we're very, very fortunate.
It would be nice, though, this is not a mandate, it's just a suggestion, that we capture some of these events and put them next to the rate schedule on the website. So people are, when you sell a car, you don't show it dirty. You do a little spit and polish and make it look nice. And
sure.
So I'm just, maybe, not a full marketing plan, but just a little something on the website that, conspires.
And
yeah.
And the website is another one of my project lists that I didn't even mention. But
you might want to mention that you can play dodgeball here too. Thank God.
We also
and
might want
that's
to
actually
consider
another
the fact that there could be the possibility of doing an all-in-one. I don't know if that makes it, because it takes a little less. I know we just tend to give people the key, but
you give people the key and you can drive the Maserati, whichever's in the parking lot. And
But I'm thinking that if we wanted, if we don't want a part and parcel completely for, like, if it's a wedding, we could simply have, maybe we add up all the fees and we have a 4-hour block that's slightly reduced. You just get the entire, that you get the entire thing.
And I am a very flexible person, so
Okay.
I just want to make sure that if you rent the community center, and you're going to have a wedding party, you rent the community center. Every other facility, if you want chairs, you've got to pay for the chairs, and we're not, because there's not even a lock on that door, as everyone can see. There's not even a lock on that, so everybody gets access to it. We just need to put some locks on the doors. We need to define the different areas. We need to define the areas for potential rental. The amphitheater is a beautiful area, and it potentially could be rented, all right, solely for purposes of having meetings out there or whatever out there. And I think I just want to make sure we can capture it.
I was going to suggest you actually put together a resolution with these figures in it and bring it to the next meeting. I actually think
that's what I'm looking for direction for tonight.
And that's what I'm recommending. That's my personal recommendation. I think we need to raise the rates. We're woefully behind the times.
I think it's a great idea.
And we just aren't making enough off this building.
We're not.
Excellent idea, and thanks for doing all the homework.
Excuse me, though, one comment. I know, since this is going to come back, if there's one thing that sort of appalls me, and I have been in Kensington for 51 years, it's that this is the youth hut. And for youth groups to be charged, scouts, et cetera, $13 an hour, I think is extremely high.
He said that K groups were exempt.
Well, it's...
Oh, the original resolution, that is the original,
excuse me, okay.
No, and youth are not charged.
Thank you, I feel much better now.
And I should clarify that in speaking with, I didn't put it on here when we do rental comparisons, but, Camp Herms is a Boy Scout facility, and there are actually rates for scouts, and I left those off. But the Arlington Community Church does not charge for scout groups. They have 4 scout groups there, and they charge less for nonprofits. So there's some.
And traditionally, community groups like the Improvement Club have not paid.
No,
rent.
Is that
still
referring
not
to any K groups?
Oh,
this
any
is
of the K
only,
groups.
and that should be part of the resolution. This is for
my strategy
parties.
My strategy is to get the board's thoughts on raising rates in and of itself, and then come back at a later time and talk and discuss K groups, because I think that I will tell you as your general manager, that's interim general manager, by the way, that I think that it's a little out of control, and all I'm suggesting is that we manage the K groups. And I don't know how if we can do that, and I don't know if I want to take that on, but I know that we need to do.
Well, that's a discussion for a later date. Okay, so
Absolutely.
let's deal with this issue now. Go ahead.
Thank you. Kay Reed on Coventry Road. So I used to run a facility like this when I was a YMCA director, and a couple things come to mind, and maybe you've already thought about this, ICOPGM. That's my new name. And that is how to operationalize this. So if I'm renting this, and I'm just paying the $125 an hour for this room, is everything else locked? And then how do you keep me from using the grassy area?
Right.
Really? you know.
Agreed.
So,
Operationally, I know.
operationally, I think that's an issue. I think you need to have a nice conversation with the Department of Health from the county about how the kitchen is used. I believe it's a warming kitchen is its technical name right now because it doesn't have any fire suppression, as there is no fire suppression in this building, and you need an ANSEL system, which is, you know, when everything goes off and you're covered with white powder, that's a requirement of heated kitchens, so I think it's called a warming kitchen, which, to the point that Director Cordova made about the caterer, you could only, you know, like put things in the oven and keep them warm, and hopefully the KSEP children are only cutting things with sharp knives and not using fire, because if there was a fire problem, there's no suppression system, so it's an issue
Absolutely.
that we have to look at. Yeah, so I just think operationalizing it, and I like the idea of maybe doing maybe a package deal as part of that, because maybe someone really doesn't want to go get a drink of water, and the bathrooms will always be open, and so they just need this room. But
absolutely, yeah, and of course they get the patio, but they may not necessarily. We have a beautiful barbecue that I think everyone has seen. We've torn out the rocks, and we're replacing with some sand, and the weather didn't help us this week. But there's the barbecue could be locked up, obviously, as it is. But if you rent this area, you pay a little bit extra for the barbecue.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's options.
Right, and I also do think, with all due respect, you should approach the third rail of community use of the building, because the community uses it. It's like a fee for service. So even if it's whatever scout group, girl or boy, or that we pay something to help with the maintenance, especially for those really high use groups. But it's not for today's discussion.
Right.
It's
We'll
the
get
third.
there.
It's the third rail. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll see a
Do I have
resolution.
direction to bring
We'll
it
see
back?
a resolution
So for
next time.
month with a
Okay.
resolution? Okay, looks.
So.
I need at least 3 nods.
I guess should we vote? Do we need a vote? Yes. We have a motion for him to. No, we want to ask him to bring back an actual resolution to vote on, right?
Yeah, so it's an action item. I'd be bring back a resolution next month for purposes of approval.
Okay,
You get another bite at the apple, though.
All right, could you at least confirm the status of the kitchen?
Sure, I'll get that question answered, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the speaker's right. I think it is a warming kitchen. I think that's the terminology. I think that's great. But I'll confirm that.
All right, so I'm going to move that he brings us back a resolution next time with the caveat that you added.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We move on.
Great.
Okay, we have, I skipped over the report from the ad hoc committee on governance. I think maybe we ought to hear that first and then go to Director Gillette's item. So, Mr. Spath, would you like to report to us, please?
Board members, my name is Dave Spath, and I am the temporary chair, to make sure everybody gets that correct, at least through January, and then we'll have an election for the next chair. So anyways, just to get all that straight, I just want to go through some of the highlights of the committee's work, because we have been working I think very well and moving forward on a number of issues. As I mentioned the last time, we are planning to hold a forum on January 23rd, which will be an education forum on police services. And excuse me, we have a draft agenda that is up on our webpage for people to look at. We also passed that out at the December 3rd meeting. And we also have a draft survey that is also on the webpage that we also passed out at the December 3rd meeting. The forum is intended to address a number of issues, starting out with what are the statutes and regulations that govern Kensington both as an unincorporated area for purposes of police services. Second, we will be describing the police services as they stand now and what the budget is, what the finances are, and what they have been over time, and what the staffing has been over time. And we're also going to begin trying to obtain public input, what we call public perception of police services. That's part of this survey development. And we're still in the process of discussing whether to focus strictly on police services in that survey or whether we want to ask some other questions about some of the other issues. So I think right now there's a difference of opinion on that, and we hope to reconcile that at a special meeting on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday on the 15th, which will start at 7 o'clock here in this facility, but we will be in the boardroom in deference to the Boy Scouts. So if the public would be interested in coming out to that, we've already received some comments from engaged citizens, Jim Watt being one, and I very much appreciate Jim's comments on the survey, and there have been others as well. So again, I would urge people to come out and engage in that process. And by the way, it's a single issue special meeting, just on the survey. So it shouldn't take that long, hopefully about an hour of deliberation for that meeting. We've also begun to develop work plans and timelines for the other 3 tasks that the board has presented to us. Those tasks, for everybody's edification, are contracting out, bifurcation of the general manager, police chief position, and also consolidation. So we've created a lead for each one of those particular tasks, a lead of a subcommittee, and that lead has been asked to at least come back with a draft work plan, and not a solid work plan, but just an idea as what the issues would be that we would have to research, and a sense of the timeline to complete those work plans. In fact, we have sort of begun to combine some of the work. Charles Reichman, Lisa Carino, and myself met with one of the administrative assistants, Tom Elwell, at the sheriff's office because we wanted to, one, understand what the sheriff's role is if Kensington did not provide any police services whatsoever as an unincorporated area. So the sheriff does provide a modicum of service, if you will, for unincorporated areas. That can be enhanced to a certain level, but it's far less than what you get right now. So we sought to at least understand what the sheriff would provide, and then we were also able to get an indication of the contracts they have for police services in several Contra Costa County communities, such as Danville, Lafayette, and Orinda. They have an existing one with Oakley, but Oakley is moving to their own police services. And at some time in the past, they had a contract with San Ramon, but San Ramon had since moved to their own police services. So we're trying to understand what exists out there, what they provide, what their costs are, their total costs, both salary and benefits. So we've been able to start combining both work we're trying to do for the forum of the 23rd, as well as begin the work on the other tasks. So, you know, we've been trying to move as expeditiously as possible. As I said, we've got the special meeting coming up on the 15th. And
David, did you want me to make my comment now when you're speaking to that?
Sure.
All right. So, Board of Directors, it's my obligation to advise you that I was contacted by the Contra Costa County Sheriff, Livingston, who received a written notification requesting and representing on behalf of the committee, the ad hoc committee, for the purposes charged by the Kensington Community and Police and Protection Community Services District, a request for proposal for law enforcement services, which I do not believe was the charge, but I at least want to make sure that you're aware of it. David is aware of it, and I at least would like to have David, I would imagine, comment to the board, but I at least wanted to make sure that the board had...
So David saw the memo, or saw the email?
Yes, he has.
So yeah, what I think was disturbing to me, the chief showed it to me at the beginning of the meeting. I guess you just received this today?
Yes, sir.
There's a line in here about meeting with him, which is fine, but it says, we anticipate submitting a formal request for proposal for provision of services. And that seemed to me to be going a bit far.
Right, that wasn't the intent. I think it was a request that was misapplied, should we say. The discussion that we had with the administrative assistant was, as I mentioned, to look at contracts. Then we asked him who we might want to talk to get a better understanding of what the sheriff does, both in the unincorporated areas and under these contracts. So he directed us to the undersheriff, and the lead of the contracting out subcommittee sent an email introducing us to him and asking if we could meet, and then included this request, if you will, for an estimate of provisions of service if we were to contract out with the sheriff. I think the intent was to find out what the sheriff's office, what it would cost if the sheriff would provide the same level of services that exist right now. But I fully agree that the way it was conveyed was inappropriate, certainly. And so I will discuss it with the lead, and we'll rectify it.
Fair enough.
And lastly, we have been working, I've begun working with Mr. Hart to try to obtain a survey instrument. Many of you are familiar with SurveyMonkey as an example, to facilitate getting public input back from the forum to begin with on police services, and to go use the survey instrument for feedback on the other issues as well, the contracting out, consolidation, and bifurcation. So I've had some discussions with interim Chief General Manager Hart on that, and I think we may have a solution that will allow us to not have to spend any more money than exists right now with the SurveyMonkey instrument that we have now. I have to go back to the committee to see if they're comfortable with the discussions I had and the solution that I'm proposing. And specifically, that solution would be that the district turn over the administrative rights of SurveyMonkey to the committee, so that we would have sole possession of SurveyMonkey. We would have the ID, the password, etc. So there would be a total divorcing of that instrument from the district to us. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Again, I'd like to thank the members of the public who have shown up. Celia and Maybury are two individuals who religiously come to these meetings and email me subsequently and ask some questions, which I'm more than happy to respond to. And they're good questions, and they're good comments at the meeting. As I mentioned, Jim Watt has had a number of good comments, and Marilyn Stolen has also provided some information and asked some relevant questions. So for those few members of the public who have engaged, they've engaged well. They've asked some very good questions and made some very good points. And I've always moved all of the comments they've sent to the full committee, so they have the ability to see them and can use them, frankly, and in case of Mr. Watt, his suggestions on the survey. So with that, if you have any questions, more than happy to answer them.
I have some questions.
Sure.
How's the attendance been of the people who are on the committee? Have you had the full committee there at each of your meetings, or?
Yes, with some rare exceptions where business has caused an absence or illness. And there seems to be quite a bit of respiratory illness going around these days, as evidenced by...
It's not my fault.
No, but we've had a few absences as a result of that as well.
And you mentioned that you had leads for each of the subsections, these 3 subsections, and they were doing draft work plans with a time frame,
Yes,
timeline?
right.
And do you expect to get those back on a certain time?
Those
January,
are
right?
The recommendation or the charge to those leads would come back on our January 6th meeting with the draft timeline and the work plan. And at the same time, then we would populate those subcommittees fully up to the 5 members that we can have on each subcommittee, and then move forward.
And will they be working simultaneously then?
They will be working simultaneously, as they are right now, by developing those work plans.
And they may be working on different schedules as well, is that true?
Depending upon the amount of research that needs to be done. Some of these tasks may require more research and a longer period of time to get to the end product. Remember now that we want to have a public forum on each one of these so that we can educate the public on, at least on where we are, what we have found to date, and get their input on issues. Because remember, these are findings of facts. We will be essentially putting together pros and cons on various options.
Okay, so we'll look forward to hearing what you, for each of these subcommittees, what you believe is the timeline they will be following for this at the next board meeting.
Right, it would be a draft timeline. Right.
Fabulous. Sure. Well, come on up to the podium so we can hear it.
While you're walking up, can I give it was a pleasure, Mr. Spath, to be at your committee the other night, and let me say how many of your committee members have complimented your moderation of those meetings, and I know they go overly long, but I have to, I mean, as all, you're not overly long, but they run a lengthy time, and I was really impressed at the dedication that all your board members, or all your committee members, excuse me, show, and the resilience and the willingness to work. So I thank those that are here. I know Mr. Artis and Ms. Corona, and whom I'm missing, Mr. Braffman, and yourself. If I'm missing anybody, I'm sorry. So thank you.
My question is, will there be a written report to the community that informs them of all of your findings?
That certainly is the intent. That's the charge that the board gave us. On each one of those tasks, we have to have a written report completed at least by November, but certainly we are looking to try to move more expeditiously on those.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
David Bergen. David, I have a couple questions. First of all, how do you select the appropriate population for the survey? Secondly, is it next door, or do you have a separate email list? And what about those members of the public who are not online?
Those are all good questions, and they are questions and issues that we have also thought about. And what we're going to try to do is do it in multiple ways. SurveyMonkey is only one vehicle for trying to get input. we hope we can get as many people to the forum as possible, and we will be passing out a questionnaire there. We will also be seeking email addresses at that time from individuals who attend. Secondly, we will be using the Outlook as a vehicle for communicating these surveys to the public. You may have already seen that we had a column in the most recent Outlook that described the basic work of the committee, and also indicated that we were going to have this meeting on the 23rd. So hopefully a large number of residents took that in and will be in attendance. We also recognize that there are people who don't use computers, and we're hoping to be able to reach them so that they can fill out hard copy that they would then input into a database. Now, one other option we were thinking about possibly is trying to use postcards to mail out as well to residents, advising them of the committee's work and the survey availability, both online and hard copy. And I have used Nextdoor for purposes of advising people as to meetings and to the availability of the audio recordings of the meetings and so forth.
I was just going to say, actually, Lynn asked me the question how HM&H did the survey. I want to make sure you guys understand that what you're proposing is not a select survey done by a statistician selecting populations.
No.
This is a survey open to everybody, and we actually did this for the park about 3 years ago. We sent postcards to everybody in town telling them where they could go online to fill out the survey. And then once they had gone online, that email wouldn't work again. They couldn't go back a second time.
Right.
So the point is, it's not a select statistical survey. It's everybody who wants to participate is given a chance to do so. That's what I think you're talking about.
Right. We're not selecting.
Right. You aren't selecting.
We're not selecting a random cohort, if you will.
Right.
And
yeah, and that makes sense. That's the way you want to do it. You want to get community input, and that's not just a statistical relevant selection. It's everybody who can participate, who wants to participate, is given a shot at it.
Exactly. We'd like everybody in the whole community to do it.
If you did the postcard approach, do you have have you approximated the price of that?
No, I haven't. It's just something we've talked about, and I think on January 6th meeting we can have a further discussion on that. And if we need, if we want to go that route, and we need some funding for that, then we're going to come back to you at the next meeting, your next meeting, which would be a week later, to request those services.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your hard work who participated in this this committee process. Pat, did you want to take up the next issue here?
First of all, David, thank you so much for your report and for all your committee's doing. It sounds like you're doing a fabulous job of moderating that. I put this issue on the agenda because there are some people who've raised a question about the timing issues. The question was first raised that the board, quote-unquote, majority must have wanted to delay this till November, and therefore was somehow making the committee take longer than it needed to take. I spoke up on Nextdoor and said, well, if I'm part of the board majority, I didn't actually agree with the time frame. I thought it should be done sooner. And at the last meeting, I expressed my opinion quite vocally about how I thought this thing should move along more quickly than it was. I am one person with one vote. I have not spoken to the other directors about what they think is the right time frame for this. But having heard your report today, David, and seeing that you guys are in fact going to be providing a sense of a timeline, I'd like to just hear what that is, and then we can see how that relates. I think that this should be done as expeditiously as possible, because I do think it's an issue that we should have resolved sooner rather than later. I don't have any grand plan or conspiracy about what should or shouldn't be done, But I do think that if we can move this along and get the facts that we need to make an informed decision based on actual factual data, not rumors, speculation, and wishful thinking, that would be a good thing. So I would propose to take this off the agenda and wait and hear what the proposed timelines are. And I'm hoping that it will be sometime in the late spring or early fall that we can get some kind of a report from the committee, if that's realistic. But I defer to the experts now, because it sounds like you guys are moving along as quickly as you can.
So January sounds like the time we dig into this a little further. Thank you.
So for the purposes of the minutes, then, you were pulling this item?
Yes, sir.
Essentially, yeah, we're waiting for the January report. Okay, we come to item B of new business. Oh, I'm sorry. Come on up, Celia.
A quick question. You are having a special meeting of the board to discuss whether or not to release Mr. Riddle's opinion?
Yes.
Okay, and that's Tuesday?
That's Monday.
That's Monday.
At 6.
So, whatever your decision is, how will you then release it? I mean, will you have a special meting for people, or will we wait till
We'll put a notice on the website.
It could be just a notice for everybody?
Yeah, and I'm going to guess that it's going to get released, okay? I'm probably speaking out of turn, but I'm going to guess the sentiment is going to be that we should make it public, and if we come to that decision, we'll publish it on the website as soon as we can get it up there.
Because that also will change the direction of what the ad hoc committee does.
Yes, it'll certainly
or have
solidify.
Some impact.
Yeah, and the point was we wanted to do this sooner rather than later because
Sure.
People, the January is a long way away. It gives people time to digest whatever. So
good.
That's
okay.
why.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll vote on it and then we'll report out from the closed session. Yes, yes. Actually, we're going to be in the back rooms there. The scouts are going to be in the main room here, so we're going to have like a very intimate session in one of those rooms back there.
I think all that we'll be announcing is either that we're going to release the opinion or not release the opinion. That's all.
Yeah,
we're not
that's going to be it.
discussion on it at all. It's just it'll be released or it won't be released.
Absolutely. Okay, Chief, item 6B of new business, would you brief the board, please?
Yes, last month the board reviewed my recommendation of increasing the fees for the Community Services District for police services or police services related fees. Those fees are essentially live scanning, fingerprinting, copies of vehicle releases, police reports, clearance letters, visa request letters. Those are all additional items and documents that have not been updated. The prices have not been updated. We did a survey. We did a comparison. Had plentiful discussion last month. The board directed me to bring a resolution back, so I brought back Resolution 2015-8 for your review and consideration.
All right, before we go any further, it looks like we're going to go beyond 10 o'clock, and we have to vote by 9:45 whether we're going to go beyond, so.
10 minutes to go.
Well, why don't we just vote now?
Oh, no. Lawsuits have been filed over.
All right. I'll tell you what, you remind me when it's time, Chuck, okay? Okay, so do you want to summarize this for us, Chief, before we discuss it? I don't think I mean the actual fee structure.
It's on page 67. So for live scan is fingerprinting. Essentially, it goes directly to the Department of Justice and the FBI. Fingerprinting, that's the ink version. We actually are the only ones that do ink versions. The ink, that's the ugly, messy part. But vehicle releases, although that may appear to be pricey, that's absolutely allowed by the government code and universally cost-effective or comparison to other communities for that. That's also typically a cost that is shared by the insurance companies and not necessarily a victim of a crime, per se. So we have police reports, we have accidents reports, clearance letters, non-resident clearance letters, as well as photographs. What happens is if someone's doing a background investigation and I put down that I used to live in Kensington, but I'm no longer a resident, so that's considered a non-resident.
Can I stop you for a minute? So the line non-resident refers to clearance letters?
Yes.
I think we ought to make that more clear. Non-resident clearance letters, if we vote on this.
Non-resident clearance letters, okay. That'll be on the final version. Photographs, so there could be photographs that are taken at crime scenes. If we, for whatever reason, release those, we don't not get a lot of requests of those, but if we do release those, so there's a cost associated with that, obviously. Electronic records, VIN verification numbers, those are just if you've got an older vehicle that you've worked on, DMV may request a VIN verification by a police officer, vehicle inspection if necessary, and sometimes citation sign-offs for fixing tickets, essentially.
Yeah, now I have a question about that. I mean, last time I got one of those things, I had to pay the $10 fine for, that you pay if you get the thing signed off. But I didn't have to pay to get the officer to sign off on it. Is this a common practice now?
I will tell you that it's been here. None of this has changed in a number of years. I will tell you that in my career, it's always been that there's been some kind of nominal fee for it. But I will also tell you that 9 times out of 10, a police officer will sign it off and
Got it.
It's community service. It's on there. It's always been on there. Government code allows it to be on there, but reality is that officers usually do out in the field. When I went to lunch and, get out of the car, they noticed, I signed it right there, and they had they left happy, and I went to lunch, so.
Well, it's not like they carry change or anything either, right?
Right.
Well, that would we want an officer to be collecting funds?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
We don't want
Absolutely not.
that exchange.
So this would be like they come to the office, right, and they write you a check or something.
Correct. So these are just standard fees that we've been charging for a number of years. It takes, unfortunately, because there's been other resolutions in the past, we've got to repeal other resolutions as this current resolution indicates, and I'm recommending that further consideration.
I have a question. I know there was discussion about the proposed fee for police reports and how that might be unfair to folks who are effectively victims of a crime. What was that fee? Did you reduce it?
The fee was $15.
Yes.
And it was actually, the current fee was $15.
$20 according to...
It was $20, all right? Yeah, it was $20. It hadn't changed. I think there was a recommendation that it be lowered to $15.
Right.
The discussion, the research found out that it had always been the $20 for the entire time.
I see.
I wasn't recommending any additional.
It wasn't an increase.
No, because that specifically is governed by the government code section as a requirement by law, so I can't raise it beyond that. That's why it's never changed.
Right, and if we see a lower fee in another jurisdiction, that's just their choice.
That's correct.
I see.
Come on up, please. We can't get it on the record, Leonard, if you don't speak at the mic.
I understood that the cost to the victim of the police report was 15 cents a page, which it's the copying cost. Is that not correct?
Yes, it is, but it's also $20.15 per page.
$20. So if somebody's a victim of a crime, in order to get a copy of the police report, they have to pay $20 plus 15 cents a page?
Yes, sir.
Does not seem right to me.
That's what it's been, Lenny.
I know. I'm not saying that's not what it's been. I just don't think it's right.
Yeah, most of the times, I will tell you that, because it's a great comment, most of the times insurance companies are paying those costs because that's part of the cost as being a victim.
Well, but sometimes there's no insurance company
That's not a
involved.
justification by any means, but it is the going rate in comparison to other communities.
Now, I asked this last time around. How many of these do we do roughly a week, a month?
5, maybe 10 a week at the max. There's no more than 10. I would say would be typically around 5.
Yes.
What's the average?
This is not a moneymaker for us, all right?
But it's a money coster for the victim. So if somebody's a victim of a crime and they report it to the police, in order to get a copy of the report, they have to pay $20 plus 15 cents a
As
page.
every other police agency charges, yes.
They're all wrong, I think,
All right.
in doing that.
May I ask how many pages on average is?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And one of the reasons why, you get a homicide, I will tell you that, that could be 300 to 400 to 500 pages. And then you also have photographs as well. It does get costly. There are certain click charges, obviously, that cost to do it, staff time. So, I mean, it's legitimate cost pursuant to that, and that's why.
But I don't think it should.
But most reports, on an average, is going to be 5 to 6 pages, 7 pages.
I don't think that's right. That the victim of a crime in a community who pays taxes, supports the police department in that way, then has to pay $20 for a report for calling the police to report a crime. That seems to me, it may be broad practice, but it seems to me to be a wrong practice, an unfair practice, an unjust practice.
Excuse me, now it's time.
Oh.
We have to take our vote on whether to go beyond 10 o'clock. Do I have a motion?
I vote we go on beyond 10 o'clock.
You move.
Extend the meeting until we finish.
You mean you move, and I second the motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're going until we drop.
I know that you were talking about hard copies. What about electronic copies? I noticed when I was doing research for Jim and I would request an MOU from another city, and it was a PRA request, I was hoping there would be no charge, and they said you could come and pick it up, and I thought, oh no, I can't do that, I don't want to have to pay for this. Can you do it electronically? Electronically, it was done immediately, and there was no charge. So I'm just wondering if there are certain things that can be released that are a click without a charge, as some larger communities are doing.
These are for, depending on the electronic record and the extent. I mean, I can't describe every single report or document that we'll have. It depends on what the requests are. We get requests for copies of face sheets of evidence envelopes. We get copies of a request for, additional evidence. I mean, it varies. And this hasn't changed in a number of years, as well as the fees haven't changed. But the actual items, descriptions haven't changed. So, there is a cost associated with a thumb drive. There is a cost associated with computer time, which is why the government code allows for it to be charged.
I don't think, this is not a PRA request, though.
No, this is not a PRA request. These are police services, police reports. These are not public, you don't charge for public PRA requests.
How many pages is the average home burglary?
I'm going to say 6 to 10. All right, could be more. I will tell you that...
Can't we do the first 5 pages free? Because that seems to be, having been burglarized, it's...
And also, I would like to add that it would discourage people from reporting crimes if they don't think it's going to, if they don't think it's going to help them in any way.
Yeah,
Lydia, you're going to have to run that by me again. I didn't understand that.
Well, if people feel that they have to, that in order to document that they reported a crime, that they have to pay $20 plus 15 cents a page, a lot of people aren't going to do it. They're not going to report it, and so that's going to skew the statistics.
I'd like to see your empirical evidence on that one.
Well, look, I don't have any studies about that.
Guys, we're trying to cover our costs to operate this police force as best we can, and unfortunately, these are extra costs that most other districts do charge their residents. So we aren't exactly out of step with what appears to be the larger universe of
understand
citizens.
that. I
And it might
understand
be
that.
wrong, Lenny, but we need to cover our costs.
Well,
everybody complains about these huge deficits we run, and this is one way, along with our charge of a barbecue and a table, to try to make us more self-supporting.
Chuck, I've said what I believe and what I have to say, and
disagree.
there's no point in repeating it and arguing about it.
We agree to disagree.
I do understand your aversion to victims of violent crime, however, having to pay a fee. And I don't know if we can differentiate if you are a victim of a homicide in Kensington. I prefer that you don't have to pay a fee. But let's leave it, I mean, if we can take our violent crimes, or not you, the
Wait a minute,
victim,
say that.
excuse me.
If you're
Excuse me. If you have someone important to you who's a victim of a homicide, not the victims themselves, yes. No.
What about a break into someone's home?
I realize that is, but I'm thinking more it's a little bit difficult for, should we have, if you think that is too difficult, but I would say that to differentiate.
Well, I will tell you that there is no cost to report a crime. It is a cost to get a copy of the report, number one. Number two, I will also tell you that the requests that we get come from insurance companies. Most people are not walking in the door asking for a copy of a police report. It's coming from an insurance company, and the insurance company, all right, are paying. They're sending what they're doing now. I've never seen this before until I came here. They're already sending us the check based on our fees. All we do is we fill it out, sign it, and deposit it. So, because
What if we had a policy that said an individual victim of a crime requesting the report doesn't have to pay? Is that ridiculous?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I asked the question.
Well, that means insurance companies would then be asking, if they know that, they'd be asking all Kensington residents to please request a copy of the report.
Yeah, that's true. Well, everybody knows insurance companies get charged more.
Hopefully, we are not insulting any insurance company people tonight, but.
I'm going to invoke a Robert's Rule of Order and call the question.
All right.
Rogers.
Can we decrease the citation sign-off? I think that's just a kindness. I know.
I work for all of you. If it's part of the motion, we'll change whatever we need to change.
Well, I think I'm going to move that we accept this as proposed.
I second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I didn't hear from you.
Yeah, I'll vote aye, it's fine.
All right, the motion
Plug my
passes
nose.
unanimously. Sorry, folks. Some things don't feel good, but we got to do them anyway. Okay, we now move to goals and objectives. This item was requested by Director Sheriff Watt. Would you please brief the board, Rochelle?
Sure, I'm happy to. With this. I think we can describe a little bit of this past year as governance through controlled chaos, which I think was desirous of no one. So I think that looking ahead, my wish was that the board has a set of articulated, curated goals with a clear matrix for success that we could discuss as both a board and a community, so that we could envision an end point for this year and some positive steps forward. We know that there are bigger issues. A lot of these that you'll read on this listing might seem like minor things. We are going to have big concerns this year, the findings of the ad hoc committee to analyze, the continuation of our a possible discussion of our MOU. There are lots of things brewing. But I think that there's some really important things that we can get done. And I think we can only achieve that endpoint through a discussion. So I have prepared a list of goals. You'll see that these were not done in conjunction with any other board members, so we didn't violate the Brown Act in any way, nor were they, or with the GM COP, and that these goals are not also meant to be the work, although it may involve the work of employees, because those goals, of course, will be discussed in private and communicated with staff. So these goals will be, are just hopefully with the input of the other board members, things of interest, things of areas of improvement, and that we want to find perhaps some, a develop priority list. And I can articulate what my priorities would be based on, but I would rather do that after a discussion with the board and with the community, because I'd like your input as well.
Quick question. I noticed some of these things have actually been done, believe it or not, or there's a mechanism in place. For example, the emergency procedures here, we actually have a standing committee on emergency response for how to deal with public emergencies, and we just need a board person to sit on that committee. And there's some other actions between the police and fire that control that. I'm not suggesting we go through this line by line. I'm just trying to think what process could we use where we know something's in place that you may not be aware of, that we could kind of check it off the list.
So there's clearly a gap in not discussing with, well, we could go to the above. There was no onboarding procedure for newly elected directors.
This year, but
so
they've been in the past, for example.
Okay,
yeah.
well, good.
But, your point's well taken. I'm just trying to say.
So we need to, that needs to be communicated to the board and then to staff, and then I think to the community at wide, that we do have emergency procedures in place. I would establish absolutely that that's one of my priorities. And I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel on any of these. I know that in certain situations, there will be things in place, and there are different committee chairs for these. You'll see that Park Buildings has probably the most listed on this particular list, happens to be because I'm the chair of that committee. So I know a little bit more intimately what needs to be done.
So thank you very much for doing this. Having sat on a lot of nonprofit boards, I think this can be a valuable exercise. However, I think what we have here is a mixture of goals and action items.
Sure.
And I think they need to be separated out. So my suggestion would be that we form an ad hoc committee of the board, because I do think you need input from more than one director, and that ad hoc committee of the board, which would be 2 board members, or can it be 3? Only 2?
Can't be 3.
2.
2.
2 board members sit down, try to come up with both goals and action items underneath those goals, using this as a really terrific working document. I also think words are really important, so some of the words that we use, I think, need to be thought through and make sure that they're attainable or the proper word to be used for that particular item. So that would be my suggestion, rather than spending a lot more time on this tonight, because I do think, at least I have a whole lot of comments.
Great. I understand your idea for an ad hoc. My preference would actually be that we find time in January to meet as a board to have a goal-setting session. That Chief Hart has offered to set that up with me privately in the past. I think you've communicated that with other board members, that a communication building session directed around goals was one of your priorities and part of your 100-day
And it still
plan.
is, and you guys funded it as well.
And I would love to do that in January at a date that we can mutually agree on, because I think it's really important that all 5 of us could be there, if at all possible, so that we can develop, because I think
it's a great workshop that is well worth it.
So I'm happy to put that on the agenda for January, and maybe do a doodle poll in advance to find a date that works.
Well, based on the fact that it's already been funded, it's in the budget, I can schedule it and just start working on getting dates and make sure everyone can meet that time period.
And just so we're clear, I wasn't suggesting that the ad hoc committee would establish the goals, but rather give maybe a better working document from which we.
But that's actually, right, but that's actually a great, takeoff point to work on goals and objectives, and all 5 of you could be there,
Okay.
all right, and having that discussions. And obviously it's a publicized meeting, and it's public, and everyone can attend if they wanted, but it's a workshop for the board to discuss goals and objectives, all right? And it's also a team building workshop to be more effective and efficient together.
Could we do it on a Saturday morning, perhaps?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's typically what happens.
No, that would be the
Yeah,
preference.
that's typically what happens. So, I only need a head nod on that because I already proposed that in my budget relative to that.
May I offer a comment or two? So I was trying to look at this strategically, and in my mind, I would like to see goals categorized by the structure that we currently have. So, we have a parks committee or a parks coordinator. We have an intergovernmental relations coordinator. We have a community outreach coordinator. And in my mind, that coordinator or that lead should somehow, identify with their committee, their standing committee, what they think the objectives are going to be, because it seems to be that's how the finance committee has worked this past year. So I don't want to fragment us in a way that, there's no structure to support. It just seems to me natural to categorize these goals, in the buckets that we currently have, which.
That makes a certain amount of sense. I mean, for example, if, it's an emergency preparedness issue and there's an emergency preparedness committee, that becomes kind of an assignment to that committee, right? That's the kind of thing you're getting at,
Exactly,
right?
and since that committee is formed by community members, it seems to me that the community-informed process is, who's on that standing committee. They all will tell the coordinator, these should be our objectives. That coordinator reports back to the board and says, committee met, committee of community members, and we see these as our priorities. What do you guys think about it?
Okay, so committee chair assignments are made in the January meeting,
Right.
So maybe that meeting comes first, and then we have this other meeting, and this other meeting, to the extent it comes to action items or consensus on things that need to be done, some of those things might go to the appropriate committee. That makes sense?
It's just a notion.
I actually like the way Rochelle and Mr. Hart set it up, which is to have a team workshop where the board does top-down what it thinks the goals and objectives should be.
I'm not arguing with that.
Here's why. The reason is it's January, and we'll be in May before we come up with a workshop with a list of goals and objectives, and I want to leave the January workshop with our goals and objectives there.
I agree.
I just want to be nimble and quick, and I think that's what Rochelle had in mind, and I think that's what Mr. Hart has
I'm
in
not sure I get the distinction. If
You're larding up a bunch of committees, and for gosh sakes, guys, I might have 24 hours a day I can live, and I'm already at 25.
So if we have a bunch of goals and objectives, who's going to do it?
That's right.
You can assign them at that meeting. The point is, you have this.
That's
team
what I'm
building-
saying.
Yeah, I mean,
No, but you're talking about coming out with respective committees first, going to the public, and having.
No, I'm just saying the committee appointments get made every January. There's a number of committees that get chairs appointed, and so to the extent we have a structure that exists to handle most of these
Execution.
issues,
That's fine.
then when we have our subsequent meeting and we have things that we decide we want to work on, there might be a committee that really they belong in, and they go to that committee. And there's some prioritization, I think, that has to happen in this discussion. Such and such is more important than something else. The building, obviously, is very important. That's a high priority. So I'm just saying that sequence-wise, we make the committee appointments first. We have this discussion that you've been talking about after that, and to the extent any of those items can become an assignment to an existing committee, they go to that committee.
Yeah, I agree with you completely.
I'd actually flip it because I really want this to be a nimble exercise, not dragged out interminably. And once you define the goals and objectives, you can stick them in the committee you want, regardless of who the chair is. It may scare people away from some of those committees.
I agree with Chuck. I think the committees are disconnected from setting the goals.
Yeah.
The fact that we have a committee doesn't mean we set a goal based on the existence of a committee, or that we can't set a goal if we don't have a committee. So I think you set the goals and then you assign them to the committees. And you can go ahead and appoint the committees, or whoever the president is can appoint the committees whenever they want to.
That's what we're saying.
Okay, then maybe we're just talking.
I appreciate both Director Cordova's and Director
Trying to
Toom's
put structure around
Right,
this.
because we have an existing structure, so I just, I don't want to create some other system of.
Not trying to, just thinking that I completely understand what you're saying, because I think the work will be done in committee, and I think it's really important to communicate with your committee and to help them define goals. But I also know that I want to have this done early in the year, because not all of these committees are formed, essentially, and ultimately, the buck stops with us. If we don't do the work, it doesn't get done. And I want the community to know that we're interested in doing the work, we're ready to do the work, and we're here to do the work. So
Yeah, these are board goals. Yeah. Right. They're board goals that we're establishing.
Well, I would call them objectives, but
Objectives, whatever.
we want, in other words,
Interim objectives, temporary objectives.
stuff we want to get done.
2016. Anyway, so
All right, so do we need a motion on this?
I think I have direction, all right? I think I have direction. Let me just throw that caveat out there. I think I have direction.
I just would
But
suggest that we set the meeting after the regular.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
Okay, so we'll do that. We'll set it after that, but there'll be some prep work being done before that, because I think there's some other work that we'll have, and I anticipate this to be a facilitated process, facilitated workshop to work through some of these goals and or objectives or whatever terminology we want to use. Is that good? All right.
Facilitated
By a professional.
He's got the budget for it, guys. We
It was.
voted for it.
I have the budget for it.
We're going to have an encounter group. Very good. Okay.
Can we set that date as soon as possible for some of us who?
Absolutely. It may be a little bit difficult because of the timing right now, but I will do my best to get it set right away. And we're talking about a Saturday in January after the 14th.
Well, that would be the 30th, because it cannot be at least the morning of the 23rd, because that is the ad hoc committee, right? I don't know, so they're having their
So already, this is a problem.
Well, all right. I mean, if we need to do it before, that's, I don't want to get in the way of,
Yeah, so the 23rd may be a good, option for everybody. So resonate that with you, and I'll get some emails out tomorrow to see.
We're going to barbecue out here in our new tent.
There is a barbecue here. We have a great barbecue. Yeah.
Our assistants will be collecting.
All right. Thank you.
all right.
Oh, no.
Last item? We at the last item yet?
No.
Yes, we are. The board will elect a president and vice president for calendar year 2016. So are there any motions for president?
I nominate Lynn Welsh.
I'll second that.
Oh, can I?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's fine. I nominate Director Vanessa Cordova.
Director Cordova respectfully declines. Thank you, though.
You're welcome.
Any discussion?
Lock the door so he can't get out.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Vanessa, you voted?
I'm opposed.
You're opposed. So,
And I abstain.
okay, let's take a roll call. Lynn, can you please pull the director?
Yeah.
Oh, I nominated Lynn. I'm sorry. I didn't speak up.
And what was the result of the vote?
We're taking that poll now.
So before we take the The roll call, I would be interested, since it sounds like two directors, one's abstaining and one's voting no. Who's your alternative? I guess your alternative was Vanessa?
Yes, that was my.
So what's your
that was my
alternative to
candidate.
Vanessa?
For now, it's abstention. I think that's
You're
right.
right. We need our votes. Done.
Uh,
It does not.
Just,
Recusal does,
I'm
but
not
not
sure how this
abstention.
has been done in the past, but normally you'd have public comment on any action item. So
go ahead.
before you vote,
Okay.
Would anybody like to comment from the public?
I'd like to thank Director Lipscomb. I'd like to thank Director Welsh for his service and all of the other directors for their service in the past. I hope you will continue and accept this nomination. I think you've all worked very hard. I'd like to just travel back if I can.
Can you speak a little bit closer to the mic? Thank you.
Usually people don't need this, but I would like to add a little footnote to goals and objectives. When I was on the board, we spent about 2 years rewriting the policy and procedure manual. And this is to Director Sheriff Watt. I believe you are the chair of that committee, or were the chair. Did that ever happen? Is that part of the goals and objectives at this point?
Well, it is part of the goals and objectives. I will tell you respectfully that I have asked Board President Len Welsh for the names of my committee members several times over the last year, to which I have never received the information. So, well, I'll
well, then let's stick it in the goals and objectives for this year
That
to
would
take
be
a look at that, because 2 years of writing deserves another look.
Well, some of the, let me just clarify, just as a reminder, we're bringing back some of the goals and objectives, goals and objectives, the board policies that need to be updated for purposes of statutory compliance, and some of which I know that you worked on personally as well, and I have your electronic copies as well. So I want to bring those back gradually, and that's why I warned the board 2016 is going to be a busy working year for them.
And they were vetted also by council at the time. There may have been some changes. I suspect it will be minimal. What needs to be done is it needs to be presented to the board, presented to the public for discussion, and I would suggest section by section. But 2 years of work and nothing happening? Okay,
Well,
just since you brought up goals and objectives.
Absolutely. No. And I do remember that prior to my election and seating on the board, I attended meetings at which additions to the policy and procedures manuals were discussed, and no action was taken month after month. I remember discussions. We can review those final approved minutes if we need to, but there were times when many changes to the P&P manual were not approved by this board after discussion, or not this board, excuse me, the prior board after discussion. So we look forward to coming together in 2016 and reviewing the policy and procedures manual and making changes as necessary.
And thanks for allowing me that footnote, but my real comment right now is I did want to find out what your basis for abstention is, because generally, when one abstains, either one has a conflict of interest or one has some personal reason why they can't participate in it, and usually the public's entitled to know why it would be so important that you would abstain, i.e. you would have no information about the matter and therefore could not render a vote, or you had in the past had a disagreement regarding it. So I personally, and I think the public, would like to know what the basis for abstention is. Again, I thank you all for your service. It's a tough job.
In the interest of transparency, I'd be interested in knowing as well.
Well, sure. I'm happy to inform you that while I have respect for President Welsh's service, I felt that there was a great absence in leadership in not providing any onboarding for incoming directors, leaving them without any information in regards to the ongoing investigation under Sergeant Barrow's losing, or of his, would that be the proper word? Would miss the incident in Reno?
Right.
That discussion, that lack of leadership in and information in regards to new board members left Kensington so open to a possibility of liability Director Cordova and myself could have discussed issues. We were contacted by the media without prior knowledge of the situation. We could have spoken and led to exposure of our employees without realizing what we were doing. It was, in my opinion, gross negligence for this committee. And while I have a very pleasant opinion of Len Welsh, and I think that he is devoted to this community, I respectfully think that he failed in his leadership in the last year. Therefore, in kindness to my personal opinion, to my personal respect for him, I felt abstention was better than voting no. But thank you for letting me clear the air. Yes, Mr. Furman.
My name's Rob Furman, and my question is just about what happens now in the procedure of electing a new president of the board. There are 5 members, 2 are not going with the vote. Can the candidate who was nominated vote for himself or not? And if not, then there are only 2 votes. Or if he can, then there are 3 votes, and that would be a majority. So I'm just asking about that procedure.
Yes, 3 votes is fine, and the individual can't vote for himself. I don't even need an attorney to answer that one.
Is it accurate that a board member who abstains is obligated to state their reasons? Is there a legal requirement?
Well, I think our policy manual requires that.
Does it?
Yeah.
Is that binding?
Last time we had well, Lynn, what would you have us do?
I don't know.
I think she already gave her reasons. She already gave her reasons.
I know, but I just want to know whether she was obligated to. And you said the policy and procedures manual obligates her to. And
that's a joke. I get it.
No, it's not a joke.
Well, you're making it sound like one, Lenny.
It's not.
Well, what's interesting is that, and maybe Mr. Riddle can shed light on this, it's my understanding of Robert's Rules of Order that an abstention is effectively a yes vote for the majority of votes. So effectively,
the way that your own policy reads is a couple of things. One, it says it's counted as being absent. The other thing that it says is members should generally vote unless they have a conflict, but it doesn't make it mandatory. Vote yes or no, but it doesn't make it mandatory. It says should.
Thank you for that's the answer, because Linda, you presented it as a requirement, and it's not. And I know, but you demanded an explanation, and I don't think that an explanation can be demanded of a director under those circumstances.
a director also has a right to recast a vote, to motion to recast a vote.
So we can do that. I mean, we haven't voted essentially, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
She can also change her vote.
Yeah, I asked for a roll call, and we haven't done that, so.
And I
So
mean,
you
you
might
know,
as well vote no.
I have an agenda about what the policies and procedures manual means. So that's the issue.
Go ahead, Celia.
I do want to remind you all that it was the position of the board that the policy and procedures were not to govern, but only to advise you.
Well, I think Randy cleared that up. He said should, and that's advice. So I think we're beyond the issue. So, Lynn, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Director Cordova?
No.
Vice President Gillette?
Yes.
President Welsh?
Yes.
Director Toombs?
Yes.
Director Sheris Watt?
After consultation with Mr. Riddle, no.
Thank you very much.
Are we on to Vice President?
Yep, we're on to the next nomination, which is
So
for Vice President.
Just for purposes of the audience, it has been affirmed, there's been 3 votes where Lynn Welsh has been nominated and elected president for another year.
Correct. Now we entertain nominations for Vice President.
I nominate Rochelle.
And I second it. Any discussion?
Are you nominating Rochelle?
Yes. I'm sorry. I nominate Rochelle. I think it sounds very good like that.
So
Any discussion?
There's been a motion, there's been a second. You can take public comment now if you'd like.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Any comment? I will comment. Despite Rochelle's criticisms, which I think are somewhat misguided, I think she has done a fantastic job in the short time she's been on the board. She's shown a lot of leadership. She's pushed ahead very strong on the Park Building Committee. Communication hasn't been the best in the world, but it's been, she's really done a lot in a very short time. She's shown a lot of leadership, and despite her objection to me being president, I think she'll be a good vice president.
I also think it's really important to have someone who's going to be on the board in the future, which would not include Chuck and me, unless Chuck has changed his mind about running again. I certainly haven't. I think it's important to have someone who is going to be on the board in the future, serve in an officer role. It does make a difference when you're helping make the sausage. So I do think it would be important for Rochelle to do it. I think she's qualified to do it, which is why I nominated her, and I really hope that you'll accept that position, or that you'll be elected.
Any other comment? Well, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I prefer to abstain if I may.
Can you tell us the reason?
This is a conflict for me.
Vanessa?
So I'll just simply.
I'm a no vote.
You're voting no? You want to reconsider your abstention, Rochelle?
No, it's fine. I'm happy to abstain, and she no one needs to explain their voting for me. So thank you.
So I think we need a roll call again.
Okay. Director Cordova.
No.
Vice President Gillette.
Yes.
President Welsh.
Yes.
Director Toombs.
Yes.
And Director Sheriff Watt.
I'll abstain if I may, because it feels a little. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I think that is the end.
So for clarity, Director,
yes,
Mr. President.
she has been she's been voted on to be vice president for 2016. I meant what I said.
Watch what you wish
should
for.
be in the position. Yeah, be careful what you wish for. Although I guess you weren't wishing. Anyway, motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Guys, we need to sign